Welcome to the Coach's Table Podcast, where coaches come to grow personally and professionally through real-world application and online education. What is going on, everybody? It's absolutely fascinating that the Super Bowl is a week, just less than a week from now, which is really cool. And by the time you guys are hearing this recording, the Super Bowl's over, but that's okay. I got the Chiefs personally. I don't know about everybody else, but I got the Chiefs winning. Should be fun and interesting to see from that standpoint. But guys, hey, look, I'm very excited for the guest we have on today. Before I introduce him and before we get going, guys, do us a huge favor, okay? Share the show. The only way the show grows, as you guys know, is by you sharing the show. So if you would do a huge favor, it takes 10 seconds of your life, put some good karma out into the world for a next coach, for an AT, for a DPT, an athlete, somebody else that tells them, hey, this is worth listening to. If you would share the show, whether you're on Spotify or YouTube. And then lastly, guys, if you would leave a review, the review is far more important than sharing the show because it lets other people know, hey, this is worth their time. It is worth their effort and their energy in order to listen to this or watch this. The full-length episodes are on YouTube as well. So if you could leave a review, subscribe, that would be much appreciated. And I would thank you very much for that. So for today, we have a very unique special guest who brings a ton of experiences from the college sector to the professional world. He's won at the highest level of the NFL. So yes, he is a Super Bowl champion, which is amazing to say. And then now he's a VP of a company, which is super exciting. And he gets to bring a really cool, unique perspective to performance that we haven't talked about on the show yet. And so I'm super excited to bring him on. So Joey Blake, what's going on, man?
What's up, man? Appreciate you having me. It's pretty humbling to get introduced as a Super Bowl champion. I like that. It's got
a good. I mean, it's the truth, though, So I think it's well deserved.
Yeah, man. It's funny when you win it and you have coaches or players who maybe have won it before that. They tell you that they're like, hey, from now until forever, you will be introduced as Super Bowl champion. I think this might actually be the first time that something where someone's done it. So it kind of gave me some goosebumps,
Ooh,
man.
let's go, man. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, dude, I think, it's the pinnacle of sports, right? Whether you're in the NFL, you're in the NBA, MLB, winning a World Series, an NBA championship, a Super Bowl or national title. It's what everybody strives for. And then to actually accomplish that, to go through the process of accomplishing it and then to accomplish it and then to be like, yeah, we are Super Bowl champs. Yeah, we are world champs. I'm sure it hits different, but you deserve it. I mean, you went through it, you won it, and I think that's really cool. And I think people should, be like, hey, man, you've seen what success looks like, and I think that's really the big lesson out of it, because so many people want to talk about it or et cetera, but you've seen what success looks like, and we were kind of talking off air a little bit, but from the leadership standpoint and everything as well, and a lot of people don't really know whether it's leadership, whether it's what right looks like, what success looks like, if you will, because they've never been in that position before. And now that you have gone through it, kind of as you were saying, like, oh man, that's what it looks like. Oh, that's different than what I thought. From your time with the Rams or some of the other ones, Tennessee and South Carolina, off the top, what are a couple of things that you noticed that you didn't expect to see from a leadership standpoint that you're like, man, that's different than what I thought?
It's a great question, and we had an awesome off-air conversation about it and how everything kind of plays together, especially the different disciplines. I think there's a couple things that stand out to me. The first one being, and it was taught to me by my direct boss at the Rams, Reggie Scott. It's allowing people grace. I think when you're specifically in football, in the performance side, excuse me, like it's, hey, there's no mistakes. Every day's 4th and 1. It's grind, 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 grind. That mentality, which I get to a certain point. Like we want to minimize mistakes. We only get a few hours with the guys specifically related to our discipline. I understand how precious that time is, but I think Reggie really introduced this. Hey, if we bring on the right people, we have people wired the right way, we need to give them the freedom to push themselves to a point where maybe they do make a mistake. And then it's, how do we take a step backward, look at it, and then like, hey, where do we go from here? And him and I would talk about this all the time of like, when you have the right people on board, you don't even have to tell them. Like they
Mm.
already know. Like anytime, like maybe something didn't function as well as I envisioned in the off-season program or something like that. I'm going to him and be like, "Hey, man, I messed this up. I got to be better." Here's how. Like he doesn't even need to come to me, and it's just like that's the culture he created because now it really puts it's empowering your people, and it's just like, hey, if I'm not only letting myself down, I'm also letting Reggie down. I'm letting our athletes down. I'm letting our coach. It's like it creates this awesome sense of accountability that like I understand where I fit within my role within the team. And it's just like I'm not going to let that fail. So it's the ability to kind of provide that grace and empathy that I think was a really unique component that I don't know that I had really seen from leadership at that point. And then the same thing, like I saw those same things on the coach's side from Sean of like off season, like him allowing other assistants to call plays in the off season or during preseason game. It's just like, hey, like that's the only way to improve. And I think that's a unique thing that I think only certain coaches can do is truly develop a staff.
This episode is sponsored by TeamBuilder. TeamBuilder is the #1 performance platform for strength coaches around the world. Their software provides coaches with an elevated experience when it comes to program development, data tracking, and staying connected with athletes and clients. Coaches also have access to consultations with TeamBuilder's in-house sports scientists to help manage and analyze data. Head to teambuilder.com and sign up with promo code TABLE to start your free 30-day trial. That is TeamBuilder, TeamBuildr.com, and sign up with promo code TABLE to start your free 30-day trial.
Specifically position coaches and things like that. Like, how are you developing from position coach to coordinator, coordinator to head coach? Like, there's only a certain group of people that are wired to like help their staff because at some point you have a job and responsibility to do day to day. You can't spend all of your time on the other people, but it's like, what's the balance of that? And I think everybody there really did a nice job of trying to help the people.
I think that is such an important topic of how do you develop your staff? Now, whether that's from a head coach or you look at your department, right? Whether that's strength and conditioning, whether that's nutrition and dietitians, whether that's athletic training, and probably now you, Joey, from a business standpoint, part of your role as, kind of the head guy is you want to hire people to do the jobs so you don't have to do them anymore, right? Like your #1 job is to hire people to do the other jobs, which now is a developmental role. When we hire them, how do we develop them? And then what roles, responsibilities, what is their progression plans so then they can take higher level roles. And I'm not saying you're hiring yourself out of a job, but you're definitely in the process and in the game of how do I develop these people to take on more and more responsibility? So it's off my plate and I can see larger pictures. A huge problem I see, or at least I've experienced, is a lot of teams, coaches, departments don't have this plan and have never thought about it. You might get it from an intern standpoint, like we got to develop these interns. But then once you get this full-time job and you've been doing it for 2 years, 3 years, there's no development plan or areas of growth that occur. And so people just keep doing the same thing that they're doing. And then it's like, well, you haven't gotten better. You haven't taken on more roles, responsibilities, leaderships, skills, or developed any skills to say, I'm ready for this head position. Is it just a time thing? Because that's a lot of times what it is. And it's like, well, just because you stuck it out for 5 years doesn't mean you're ready.
You survived. You're good. You got it.
You know what I'm saying, though?
Like, oh, 100%. It's true. Like, and I think the best way to do it is like, hey, responsibility and equity within a given program is earned, right? So you nailed it. Like, there's a certain amount of time, like, hey, you bring on whether it's an intern or entry level person. Hey, here's your roles and responsibilities. Like, okay, they have that down. They're even maybe more efficient. I'm seeing maybe they got some time on their hands. Then it's like, okay, hey, I'm going to empower you. And it's just like, hey, I'm going to pass off our return to play on this particular thing to you? How to comfortably feel, well, hey, like, can I work with another Yeah, hey, what I want you to do is I want you to put a program together, you work, and then it's like you empower them to own that category. And then it's, hey, what do you need from me? Check in, do those things. I really did start to appreciate the abilities. And then it's just like, they're not going to let you down if you have the right person. Like, and then it's you slowly grow in that, but you nailed it. Like, if you have somewhere that I think so many times people don't want to give away their roles and responsibilities because they're insecure about, like, well, if someone asks me what I do, like, what do I do? And it's just like, you manage all of the people who are running the functions. And so I remember we were doing like a continuing ed stuff, like internally amongst our performance team. And it kind of hit me where I was like, we have a lot of really talented people in our building within their discipline. Why don't we just bring them in, whether it was, personnel coaching, and talk to us about something? And I went to our GM and I was like, hey, here's kind of what we got going. Would love for you to come talk to us. So he comes, it's all performance, so strength, athletic training, nutrition. And he's talking about different books and some different things like leadership. And he gets to this topic about what does good leadership look like? And he's like, the simplest way I can put it is that he actually like called me out by name and was like, Joey, if you got sick or hurt on your way home today, would your department function as high level as it could tomorrow? And I was like, definitely not. At that time, I don't even think I had an intern.
Sure.
And I was just like, no, I can't. Like, there'd be no way. He's like, is that a problem? And he's just like, good leadership is, are you empowering the people around you enough to where if you were gone for a week, would people notice? He was like, if you really check your ego enough, if the answer is yes, it would function and no one would notice, you've done your job as a leader. He's like, now that's hard to swallow because people want to think that the world will stop if I'm not here. And that's why I thought like COVID changed everything from that standpoint. The NFL kicked off playoff football games without a head coach. They don't care whether you're injured, dead, doesn't matter. They're kicking that thing off at 1:00 on Sunday. It doesn't matter. So I think it's just a good lesson of like, hey, you got to do this one way or another. It's going to move on without you. Why don't you just empower the people, make everything go together? And it brings that team component to it.
Exactly. But then Joey, if I'm not there, why do they need me? Right.
That's it.
Right. Is that
hard.
that's the question. That's the next question that people ask. Right. If I'm not like, because I agree with you, like I firmly do, because especially now as VP, you're like, hey, let me hire more people, and now my role becomes managing people, right? And I've done the functional stuff of like, I know the technical and the tactical components that require this. Now I manage people, I empower people, right?
Sure.
And then people go, well, if I'm not there, then they're just going to get rid of me and they won't need me. Maybe not. But to your point, if you can't take a week off, that is a big problem. That's a big problem.
Completely agree. And it's really not best serving the athletes, right? It's like, if you removed yourself, it can't function. Like, you're not going to be there all the time. Yeah. Like as a director, if you get called into the head coach's office or whatever it may be, or you're like, and if you're not there, things can't function. Like, that's a problem. Like, you can't be in multiple places. Like, strength or athletic training or nutrition function in 3 or 4 different areas throughout your building. It's just like, you can't be in all those. So you better have protocols and procedures in place. And also your staff needs to be aware of what those things are. Now there's a certain sauce about everybody that we want to be able to bring. That's where you need to feel confident in yourself, right? It's just like, hey, my ability to get an athlete to buy in, like, that's where I'm always going to feel confident. And like, hey, here's how we do it. Like, here's our return to play procedures from nutrition on an ACL rehab, all these things, or just like, hey, if you need to lean, maintain, gain, hey, here's the blueprint. Get your athlete to buy in. That's where you got to be confident in your level as a practitioner of like, that's what you can't replicate. And so it's just like, I mean, we're
Hmm.
all doing a lot of the same things, whether we
Yes.
want to admit it or not. The
Yeah.
programming or the things we're
Yeah.
using, like we're all doing a lot of the same stuff.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's just like now how you get guys to buy in their level of like that's the sauce. And it's just like, is your mental capacity and the things you're doing at an optimized level? Sure. Then it's just like, how do you get guys from here to here?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's the individual.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, it's an ego insecurity thing, and people don't want to admit that, but it 100% is.
Yeah, 1000%. And you've said, just to go back for a second, you said a certain word several times that I've picked up on that I think people, I don't want them to overlook it. And that is, you allow people to, you empower people and you allow them to own their space. Whatever that space is, nutrition, athletic training, strength and conditioning, position coaches, etc. You allow them to own that space and provide them with the resources and the support to own that space. Because if Joey gives me ownership, this is your thing, right? Don't fail it, don't drop it. You are going to have so much more dedication and willingness to make this as good as possible
Great.
rather than I'm just like, okay, come with me. I'm going to do it. You just stay there, right? Like, let me show you. And to your point, it's that when people own stuff, when you empower them to do their thing and get the end result, they will own it and it becomes so much better. And that's how they develop too. That is a way that they
Yeah.
develop, not the only way, but a way that they develop. And then it comes down to their relationships too, like you said, like comes down to the relationships. And if you can influence people and get them to buy in and you have relationships and trust, well, there you go. And if you're super efficient, this is one thing I think we suck at in the athletic space. We penalize people for being efficient.
No question.
We do it so much and we're like, you need to spend 85 hours here a week. It's like, why? I can do the job in 15.
Yep.
Like, but we penalize them for being really efficient.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, there's so many parallels in the things like how you and I think about the structure of the bit, and that's it. Like it's there comes this like level of I think there is a level of like there's an hour requirement that ultimately takes you to do your job, whether it's how long the athletes have to be there, all those things. But it's just like, hey, if you're sitting around for an hour and a half telling stories on about recruiting or whatever it is and this that like hey like guys if we just stopped talking and did this work we could be gone by now. So it's just like
Yeah.
and I do think like that's the technological advancement of some of the things like
Hmm.
I'm not going through manually writing out these like I can plug this into a spreadsheet and do it. I can do like
Yep.
use your resources to become more efficient to where like instead of you having to work 6 to 10 p.m. like you're from 6 to 7 and you can eat dinner at home and do those things like it doesn't have to be like that.
Hmm.
But you're right, the mentality is like this is what I have to do. I've got to sleep in the office, all these things like
Yeah.
I know for a fact that doesn't work. Like that I've seen it. I've
Yeah.
seen buildings that are grinders and it's negative and there's a fourth and one mentality and we didn't win a bunch of games. And then I go someplace where it's positive, it's don't guard your desk. If you can do this somewhere else, don't be here.
Yep.
Like, hey, as long as you're doing your job, that's all we care about and you're bringing stuff to the table that we want you to bring. That's ultimately what matters.
Yeah.
Like how are you affecting the people around you every day and all the other stuff if you can do that and be done by 6 o'clock great like
Cool.
but I think you're right a lot of times it's not viewed that way.
Yeah. It's yeah, and it sucks. I've been in similar environments where it's like you do have a hour requirement. You will be here from X time to X time, and you will not leave before then, regardless of how fast or how slow you complete your work, or if there's even any work to do, right? And then I've been places where it's like, you just explained, and I prefer the latter. I really do,
Yeah,
and I think
yeah,
the thing is with um, the pandemic and COVID, what it showed us was we could get a lot of stuff done at home, you know,
100%.
and if we systemize our processes, we don't need to spend 50 hours a day in this facility or facilities. Hey, let's systemize our processes. I'm sure you guys all have systems. I have systems now. I'm super efficient. Like, it's super efficient where I'm like, it takes me 15 minutes to update everything and I'm ready to rock, right? But then you get penalized for that. And they're like, well, be here longer. And like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So, okay, I want to talk about one other component and then we can go to like the nutrition component because I think that is super beneficial and impactful as well, more than what people give it credit for. But when we talk about the success that you guys have had with the Rams, how important was the environment? And you've kind of alluded to it a little bit, but how important was the environment there to help support and push forward the success of the team and have kind of a level of expectation of this is the way we operate and this is what's accepted and this is what is celebrated rather than other area or other teams, other organizations, you know this, there's cancers everywhere and they quickly spread amongst the locker room and guys and then it's negative energy and then it's all this other stuff. How important do you think or did you notice the environment was on a successful program compared to one that wasn't?
No, it's a great question. And I mean, I think it drove a lot of the things that we were able to do over 6 years. And I think it all started with, Sean's ability to be dynamic. And I think he created credibility immediately with the team because his capacity, like he's an awesome guy, knows everyone in the building by name. And that was great. So you just liked him right away. But then like you get to the offseason program and this dude is clearly like an offensive, mind and he can rattle off everything. But then he starts going over the defensive side of the ball and he knows every defensive call with every defensive player's assignment for a given call. And you just start to see the defensive players like looking around like this dude knows the defense.
Yeah.
Like, and so it was instant credibility of like, oh no, like everybody's aware of what's going on. And it just like, it bought it in. And then, we had a new strength coach at the time when I came in. Reggie's team on athletic training side, like had unbelievable culture in place. And then it was the education. I'm like, hey, here's what we've seen that works. You bring your own component, but how do we make this fit? And then, but it took time. Like we had a great time that first year, but like it really just takes time because again, like equity and credibility is earned over time. Like you can't, it's not something that you just instantly get people to buy into. Like in what we do in performance, there's a certain level of people are going to trust you because you're a professional, but like really to get the most out of everybody. Like I always say, like people are divided up into thirds. You got a third of people that they are going to get the best out of themselves every day. Like, hey, I'm going to do this. Here's how I'm an intrinsically motivated person, blah, blah, blah. Then you have like this middle third that can get swayed in either direction. It's like, hey, some days I'm feeling it, I'm over here. And then you have this other third that no matter what you tell them, they're not interested. And it's just like, okay, so how do you make programming the where you never lose this top third, where it's satisfying them like, man, hey, I'm in on this. This is awesome. You sway the middle third to that, but you never lose the bottom third. It's just like, how can you get them close? So it's like all of those things. And it takes that group has to trust you as a person. And it's just for them, how long does it take to do that? Is it 3 months? Is it 6 months? Is it a year? Is it 2 years? The amount of guys that I saw not interested in nutrition at 21, like most people aren't at 21 years old. It's just like all of a sudden you just treat them well, ask them questions, try to help where you can, even if it's something small like hydration, something like that. Facilitating, like, I don't care. Like if they want to order food, that's not like, hey, how can I help? Can I put this in the hot box for you while you're out at walkthrough? Like, let me know what we can do. Like it's those little things and those little touch points. All of a sudden they turn 24. They're a little bit older, a little bit more mature, and they buy into nutrition because of you. Not because it's just like, well, hey, like you mentioned this a while back. What do you think? It's like, I got them. And so it's just, all those things take time. And I think you meant it's like, it's a representation of the ecosystem. Like if they're not happy showing up to work, it's going to be hard for that level of care because you're ultimately going to create it's us versus them. It's
Yeah.
athletes versus coaches
Yep.
and all those things. And that's why I think we talked about the leadership and empowering. The number one thing I think places can do, and I used to talk about this with people there, it's talent identification. It's just like so many times you get a sponsorship, recommendation like, well, hey, I called such and such and they liked them. So like, we're going to hire like, well, hey, how does that person fit with the team? What's their skill
Mm.
set? And it's
Mm.
just like, hey, like, yeah, hey, here's this person who was this, and this. Great. IQ through the roof.
Yep.
Great. But like, how is it? I always think the best way to explain it is basketball team.
Yep.
If you got too many volume scorers within your performance team and all they want to have the ball in their hands all the time, that shit ain't gonna work.
Yep.
It's like
Yep.
have somebody,
Yep.
I just want to rebound,
Yep.
to take coming to America line, I just want to make fries.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like, if you don't have some people that's just like, coach, how do I help? I want to hunt. I just want to do this. You better have a couple of those people, because if you got everybody that's just hunting all this stuff up here, it's not going to function the way it should.
Yeah.
And that's up to the person in charge of making those hiring decisions to make sure like, hey, how is it all going to fit? Because that's ultimately what builds your culture, is you have everyone moving in the same direction.
Yeah. I absolutely love that. I could not have said it better. And here's why. I've been several places and so have you. I think, how do I want to phrase this? I think the character collectively of the team, department, staff, whatever you want to call it, and then the character of the individuals is what helps drive that train too. And when you have bad character people or selfish character people or all scorers, right?
Yep.
And nobody that wants to assist, nobody that wants to do the rebounds, nobody that wants to play defense, right? You get into a predicament where everybody wants to be the top guy, or not even the top guy, but everybody wants the ego, the look at me, I'm
I want to be in front of the room, 100%. Yeah,
100%. Too many Chiefs, not enough Indians, if you will, right? But when you can get people that accept their role, hey, I'm great at making fries. I'm great.
That's it.
And then you give them ownership to do that, right? You have to have both. You can't have just accept your role, it's you accept your role and then own your role.
Love that. Yep.
And when you do that, you can be very successful, right?
Agreed.
But when the opposite is and everybody wants to score and everybody wants this and that and this and that, then there's no accountability either.
Yes.
And that's a huge problem. And
then accept and own. I love that. You need to patent that. That's outstanding, truly.
Yeah.
Like it's such an important thing. Like, I gotta accept it, but then it's like, hey, here's my bed. I'm gonna make this thing every day.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, well, I just made that up on the spot, so so feel free to utilize it.
I'm gonna steal it. Yeah, it's done.
No, but it's true. Okay, so let's go down that role and let's go a little bit more in depth, and particularly on the roles in which you have taken on while you're with them, and when where you're at today. If you guys are coaches or athletes and you're listening to this, you recognize how important nutrition is. And we all recognize that it's probably a bigger role and has a much larger impact than what we want to believe, or at least than what we give it the credit, energy, and time for, I should say. Because everybody wants to practice really hard, and we're going to train really hard, which is all great, and I love that, don't get me wrong. And what you do in the 22, 24, 20 hours outside of all of that is the most important thing, whether that's nutrition and recovery, which is sleep and everything else from that standpoint. Because you can only go 100%, and I learned this lesson a very hard way, but you can only go 100% for so long, right? And until that, I know everybody hates these car analogies, but it's the truth. Until that gas tank goes to E and you're always filling up to a quarter tank, you're never going to run as efficiently as a full tank, right? What have you noticed and experienced from a collegiate standpoint, from an NFL standpoint, that has helped get athletes to buy into nutrition more than just pushing it away. Because college athletes, you know this, and even pros that get drafted really young, you know, they don't think it's important until they're 28 and their career is about ready to call it a day, and they're broken and all these things are happening, and they didn't get the big payday or whatever the case may be. What did you see kind of throughout that time to be like, man, these people that really invested in this really had a longer career, a healthier career?
Sure.
Because we know injuries are super detrimental
Yeah.
to the success of a career.
No, it's a really interesting component. You know, I've been far enough removed out of the collegiate landscape, and unfortunately, like even the guys who or athletes in general, just that may or may not take care of themselves from 18 to 24, like you can probably overcome it, right? And it's
Sure.
and that's what nutrition's a really hard one. And you gotta, like, I mean, I used the word grace before, like you gotta be willing to allow athletes grace, because one, you have to educate them, and then, hey, if they've eaten pretty crappy
Yeah.
and they're in the NFL,
Yeah.
it's been working. So like, you know, and like that's how I would view it as an athlete.
Yeah.
Because it was just like, hey, if a guy never worked very hard in the weight room or never did the stuff outside, you know, didn't have recovery strategies, it's just like, hey, I'm here, I feel great. Like, you know,
got
what?
me this far. Got me
They
this far.
might, like in their mind, they might. The thing about it is, like, the human body, and specifically when we're talking about the 1% of the 1%, which if you're a collegiate athlete, you are.
Yeah.
Anything from there up is 1% of 1% of 1%. And it's just like, your body is so efficient and it's so unique that you've redefined what normal and good feels like. And that's, I think, no different than any human being. Like, if you eat the same way, you eat crappy, you don't sleep good, like your body will adapt to be like, this is normal. I'm at homeostasis, I'm at baseline.
Yep.
And it's just like, how can you, and you nailed, I love what you said about 100%. Those were the conversations I had, like, with our really good players that maybe didn't do some of the things that they should be nutritionally. It's like, hey, I'm not going to sit here and lie to your face and be like, if you do this, you're going to fit. It's like, here's my thing for you. How long can you stay in your prime for? Like, hey, you're top 3, top 5 paid at your position. If that's what motivates you, or if it's just like, hey, you're excelling at the highest level, whatever those things are, how do we keep you there? Like, you can play for 12 years, 15 years, whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
How can you play 10 years and still be in the top 3 or top 5? One, like, you're creating a legacy in performance. 2, you're going to make a lot more money. The difference in the top 5-10% of guys at each position is substantially more than the middle third at any sport. So it's just like, now it's just like, okay, what things do you think you can do better? And then it's just like, the really, really great ones will listen to you, because you're coming from a standpoint of like, all I want to do is help you.
Yeah.
And it's just like, and it may be like, and that's across, like, anybody who I've ever worked with, like, maybe they like their McDonald's, to be like, Joey, man, I'm going to eat this McDonald's twice a week. Like Fridays after, great.
Cool.
What 3 things can we do at other points during the week? And I don't know that I've ever had an all-pro player that I worked with that was ever like, no, I'm not doing that. And to me, like, that's the difference, is like, you trust the people around you. You understand, like, you know what? He's coming at me from a really, like, real standpoint, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
I'm in on that. He's probably right. And it's my job to facilitate that and not let him down, right? If it was something small of like, hey, I want to do, you know, this anti-inflammatory supplementation Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of every week after a game. Well, I'll be damned if we don't talk about that, and the next Monday I don't have it. If I don't do that, it's done forever. I've lost that athlete. Here's what I said I was going to do. It's done. But as soon as you do it, hey, that's what I got to do. And then win, lose, or draw, however good they feel, she's like, no, you're right. I need to stay in rhythm. Yeah. Because that's usually how the great ones are wired.
Yeah. You hit the nail on the head there. And I hate to say it, because I think it's a double standard personally, but how you can pour into these athletes and say, hey man, I think this is really beneficial for you, right? And then let's say the one time you don't provide them with whatever it is, you lost them forever.
It's over.
You lost them forever.
It's over.
Right? But this is where I think there's the double standard. The one time they don't do the things, it's cool. You know what I'm saying?
That's the talent gap. They got talent, I don't. And so mistakes. And that's it. Like, hey, if you want to pay me X amount of commas,
yeah,
it is what. And I think that's where you're exactly right, because your level of buy-in, you want to help so bad. That's how we're all wired. That's why we're here.
Yeah.
And it's just sometimes they don't view it the same as you. And so it's just, you just gotta, and that took me, I used to get really frustrated when I was 23, 24, 25 with that thing.
Yeah.
And you finally reach a point where and it was, like I said, it wasn't, I keep using the word grace. Like, it wasn't until someone gave me grace that I was able to give it. And so it's just like, when I made a mistake and my boss like, hey, like, what happened? It wasn't like, bro, what? Like, it was, well, hey, like, how can we fix it? And I'm like, wait, why are you being nice to me?
Yeah.
And so it's just like, and then like, I was now able to take that and be like, back to our point of like, this is what leadership looks like.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be in a leadership position to give leadership. It's just like, as soon as someone showed me that grace, I was like, you know what? These guys are going to mess this thing up every week. There's going to be somebody who's like, hey, we have this great plan, and they want to do it. And they just throw it up. Man, I forgot, man. Cool. Hey, how can I help you remember? Instead of like, yeah, okay, man, whatever. Like, I'm not doing this for you again if you don't come back. Like, I can promise you how both of those interactions are going to go.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things working for you, but it is hard in those moments not to, because you just care so much and you want to help.
Yeah. Another saying that you hear a lot in sports is you can't care more than they do. And as much as that sucks to say, it's the truth though, right? And what you're saying is right though, because we've all been there. Look, I've the conversation you just had where it's like, oh, you forgot? Really? That conversation can go one of two ways. And one way can go south really, really fast. And one way it's like, okay, you know what? Let's try again tomorrow. Yeah. And the one that goes south really, really fast, been there, done that many times, probably yourself as well. There's then animosity that's built up. Then there's resentment. And then there's, these guys are going to forget it every single time. They don't care. Yep. Right. And it's that snowball effect that just goes more and more and more and more negative to the point where you're like, I don't even want to talk to them. Right. And then it's bad. And then you're like, oh my gosh. Then it's like, now you compound that, not just you and that athlete, but now think about the negative energy that spreads across the culture, the team, the organization. And that happens quickly because negative energy and bad attitudes spread way faster than good attitudes. And it's just the way that the world is. Negative news, whatever reason, gets more attention, but it just spreads way faster. And then it's quick to be like, that guy is not good. We need to remove him. Right?
Couldn't agree more. And I totally agree on the, you can't care more than them. I think the thing that you do have to care more about them about is your thing.
Yes.
They will feel like if they think you don't care about your thing, they're not going to care about it either. Especially when I talk about the middle third, bottom third. Like, if they don't think like, hey, this guy cares, he's all about it. Like, man. And then that was a big thing for me. Like, I don't think that, dietitians or strength coaches or all that have to look a certain way or, those types of things. But I do think there's a component of like, hey, like the athletes watch how you operate as well. Yep. And so it's just like, if there comes a moment where they're watching me or the stuff that we bring into the facility for fuel and all these things, being like, man, you're going to have some people like, why are we doing this? Yep. It's just like, as soon as those things start, and like, I just try to do my best to never create those opportunities for those negative thoughts to come in. Like, so it's just like how I carried myself and like, whether it was healthy or not, like I tried to eat a certain way, like all the time because it was important to me. Like, that's why I went into nutrition, not only for myself, but for others, but it's like, this is important to me. And it's like, I want to make sure that I'm portraying the right model of like how I feel like nutrition should go. Now, there's two sides to that of like, I also want them to know like you can live your life as
Yeah.
well. And it's,
Yeah.
we would try to create things like,
Yep.
to get into the weeds of nutrition a little bit. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, for guys who would talk about sweet tooths, it's like we didn't really have like candy and things like that in the building. So we started doing some different things during the week. It's just like, all right, hey, for people with sweet tooths, chocolate, whatever, go to your chef and be like, hey, let's remake Reese cups the best way we can possible. So it's like, hey, let's use 80% dark chocolate, almond butter. Like, how many ingredients can we get this down to? And
Sure.
it's just like, let's make the best like Reese cups in the world, right? And it's just
Yeah.
like, we're like, if a guy eats 2 or 3 of these, like, hey, they're getting some anti-inflammatories, they're getting some carbs practice. Like,
Yeah.
I feel great about that.
Sure.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
so it's just like, those are things that you can do for guys that provide so much value. But it's just like, if I don't care about that, no one's going to care about it.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you don't accept it and own it and then go to the chef and be like, hey, man, we've identified that X percentage of guys have sweet tooth. Can we help them
Yeah.
while doing this in a moderately decent fashion so we all feel pretty good about this? Like, where can we all compromise and meet in the middle? You get your sweets, we get a little bit of the positive nutritional benefits, even though it's not like the best choice, which is
Sure.
fine, right? But then the chef's like, oh, you get to be creative
That's it.
and figure out a way, whatever way you want, in order to create this that they like. And you know what? We can be happy with. Is it the best choice? No. Is it okay? Yeah. Right. And so it's like that balance of like, where can everybody get creative, have ownership, and a little bit of compromise, right? Because let's be honest, you know this and I know this. We're not eating perfect all the time, regardless of how much you know about nutrition or how little you know about nutrition. And that's okay, right? Like, especially post game, I'm like, give them pizza, give them wings, give them ice cream. Like, I really don't care. Like,
Yeah, I think it's no different in the strength world, right? Like you want to create this programming every day of the week that is like in alignment for your program, is whether you're in a power block or strength, whatever those things look like.
mm-hmm.
Day before the game, guys might just want to do arms.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? And it's just like, hey, let me build this arm program for these guys, create a little juice. It's like those are things that the parallels, and that's like we talked about silos a little bit, and like people just like don't touch my. It's like there are so many parallels within all of our disciplines. There are times where we have to compromise and not do the exact optimal thing because we have to get guys to do it.
Yeah.
Like we don't live in this vacuum of like there's no emotion, there's no anything like that. Hey, sometimes guys enjoy the moment, and it's because if you do that, you're giving them one thing, and then they'll do something maybe they don't want to do later.
Right.
Because like that's like, hey, we got to hit 90% max speed this week. Like we haven't touched it in a couple weeks. We got to do this. It's like if you don't have those arm farm days, you might not get every athlete to do that. So it's like you got to give and take on that.
Yeah, it's an art and a science of the push and the pull, right? And it's difficult because you're right. And like from a professional standpoint, we're like, well, yeah, we need to hit max velocity sprinting so we don't have hamstring injuries, and we could go into the literature and the science of all of that. And guess what? They don't care. The guys don't care. Nobody cares. The head coach doesn't care, right? Like nobody cares.
Yep.
And that's fine. But it's like, okay, where can I say, hey, man, let's do arm farm days and abs because that those are always get great buy-in.
For sure.
And then let's have some candy, chocolate, whatever. Okay, cool. Hey, if we do that, y'all cool with this? Can we get 3 hard sprints at 30 yards? Yep. Okay, cool, great. Everybody's happy and life is good, right? And then that's difficult because you're right. That's where the relationship comes into play, the buy-in, the trust. And you know what? Maybe you say, hey, we're not doing it this week, but next week, can we do it? And the guys will be like, yeah. Like,
100%.
And it's tough because if you're going to own your stuff, you're like, well, we need to do it this week because we want, you know what I'm saying? It's like, well, we want to, and we need to from a physiological standpoint and all this beautiful stuff that we want to blab about that nobody cares about. But and it's tough because, but what you emphasize actually gets better, and what you don't emphasize falls by the wayside, right? And so, it depends on what your culture and environment is also. Yeah, it's so interesting. So, okay, Joey, let's kind of talk a little bit about where you're at now, what you are doing now, because I find that very interesting and how that can apply to teams, individuals today.
Sure.
Because one of the questions that I have actually, and maybe you guys do this, maybe you don't, but how important do you think blood work is for collegiate and professional athletes?
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime that you can individualize
Mm-hmm.
anything, it's always going to be better, right? Like I
Yeah.
think, you always have these global strategies, but really within those strategies, you want to be able to create the individualized
Mm-hmm.
programming within, whether it's nutrition, recovery, strength and conditioning, whatever those things are. Like you want to make sure that, you're doing those things. It's like, hey, for defensive backs and wide receivers, like, okay, here's the skill group, but you
Yeah.
still want little things in between. Like one of this group, one of these people runs backwards, the other one doesn't.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
like, there's clearly different things within the programming that you have to individualize. Same thing with nutrition. Like, hey, you might have a wide receiver who's 175 pounds and one that's 215 pounds. You can't create the same nutritional programming for those people. And then as you get more granular, like on a cellular level,
Yeah.
getting a snapshot of where they are is unbelievably important. It gets tricky, especially in and around collegiate programs. Like budget becomes a factor on a lot of things.
Yeah.
But I think truly to make an impact, whether it's like looking at the gut microbiome, like truly having an understanding of like, hey, what is this people or, what is this group operating efficiently on? Like so much of your immune health, digestion, absorption starts in the gut. Like to me, I would rather get a gut microbiome snapshot than I would an actual blood draw from a nutrition perspective.
Sure.
Now, I think from a global performance side, there are things that blood work can tell us based on load and things like that that are good to look at through different training blocks for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I think from a nutrition standpoint, it's really interesting, and we're still learning so much about the gut microbiome, and I feel like it changes like every 3 months.
Yeah.
But it's just like to truly understand as we get granular on the physiology of absorption and digestion, like you really need a snapshot of what that person is, because like two people that look exactly the same, like what they utilize and then and how they probably are a completely different rate. Or one's not as, maybe they lack an enzyme, something like that, and one gets massive GI upset. Like it's a very interesting thing. So all the little things that you can do to individualize that, it would be amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think, man, that's that is a whole nother conversation for days, weeks,
For sure.
about the gut and the importance of it and the connection to the brain and then the rest of the body, obviously. But with what you guys are doing, you guys are taking a individualized approach to that, right?
Sure. Yeah. And I mean, it was, so I was actually buying from the company I work for now. And I think I've thought, when I was coming on your show, I started to kind of think about like, what is the equivalent of, what strength and conditioning, because really like strength and conditioning is like 30 years ahead of us, right? Like, hey, these positions started, like they have
True.
much more buy-in. I know
Sure.
you laugh, but it's like, it
Yeah.
really is true. Like, all
Yeah.
the societies and how they function, like you guys have such a better grasp of where dietitians are within sport of where we are. And so like I try to look back, and it's like really the best comparison I have is like when you guys went from paper cards, paper programming to digital.
Yeah.
Like that's where we are as a company, is that we are taking a process, whether it's dietitians, athletic trainer, strength, whether you're putting pills into a tackle box and you're dealing with bottles, and I have a sheet of paper and I'm looking at, okay, this guy gets this guy gets 3 fish oils, this female athlete gets, this and this. And I'm looking at that, and it takes so much time. Not only does it take time, but the amount of error you're going to have of, wait, did I put 2 vitamin Ds and such and such? Nope. What we've done is we take all that over, right? We can build out packs, do those things. And it's like maybe someone doesn't have the capacity to individualize, all of their baseball or softball or football team or, whatever those things look like. Well, you can just create your protocols where it's just like, hey, here's the daily pack. I'm going to put it in there. Well, here's the daily pack plus extra vitamin D. And then you just have your list and there's no mistakes. As long as
Yeah.
you put that pack with that given player, you can't mess it up. So it's just like, it really does alleviate that pain point of like, hey, I was writing it on here. It's like, well, no, here's your iPad with your program. Like
Yeah.
that's really essentially what we've done in a way. And there's still ways that we're going to make it more efficient and make it better,
Yeah.
and continue to individualize it, add things to the catalog that can continue. It's like adding machines or equipment in the
Mhm.
weight room. We want to continue to do that. But
Yep.
truly what we've done is we've gotten away from paper and made it digital.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll tell you, it's funny you say that because now that I do all, digital programming, I'll never go back to
100%.
I'll never go back to Excel. I'll never go back to printing cards off and having athletes write them in and then, taking all those and inputting on. No, 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 no.
Crazy.
The software as a service, if you will. And I'm like, dude, my efficiency has gone through the roof. I can, there's a lot of great things from that, right? So
When did that change for you? Was that COVID that really pushed you past it just due to like how you had it, or was it before or after that?
after actually, because the universities that I was at prior to that didn't have, they were all doing paper cards as well, right?
Yep.
The thing is, and I think you know this, um, when you're in an organization, it's an organizational decision to determine where we're going to go,
Sure.
right? And to me now, it just doesn't make any sense to go the old traditional route. Let's continue to print paper out and let's continue to have athletes write this stuff down. It's like we're in a digital era. We have been for a while. Athletes know how to utilize these platforms way better than we do.
Yep.
And they know what an iPad is, especially by the time they get to college. They know what an iPad is. They know how to function it. So like, why wouldn't we utilize that to our benefit, right? And sure, it costs a little bit more money up front
Yep.
in regards of like buying the iPad and the software, but over the long term, 5 years, 10 years, 50, you save so much money and time, and you just like reduce the amount of stress, right? So it was
Sure.
actually after, not because of a personal decision, but because of organizational decisions. And then it's funny, this. Once an organization makes a decision to go digital, they're like, why were we not doing this 10 years ago? It's like,
It's weird to think that you ever did it the other way.
yeah,
With maps all the time when you
yeah,
just plug
yeah,
a GPS into your phone or your car. Like,
yeah,
how did I used to do this
yeah,
before this happened?
yeah.
Like,
When we
this
printed
doesn't
out
seem real.
MapQuest and then
Literally printing it out
yeah,
100%. And
yeah,
then
yeah, yeah.
I remember going on trips and look, like we had the Walmart maps.
Yeah,
Like,
you open, yeah,
it just seems
yeah,
like that never existed.
yeah. It's what I equate it to is once you. I'm going to use another car analogy because I know people love them. So my car has a heated steering wheel, and before I never had heating steering wheels, right? And I'm from Minnesota. The winters are cold, etc. Once you get a heated steering wheel, it's like a luxury. You're like, I'm never willing to give this up anymore.
Yep.
Or heated seats. I'm never willing to give this up anymore. And the next organizations, people I go to, you're like, I want to make sure we have this in place because it makes life easier.
Yep.
And if not, then that's a value add I can bring. And it might take a little bit of time and that's okay, but it's a value add I can bring in. So let's change this because it's going to make everybody's life easier.
Sure.
And that's where I think if you're not systemized as an organization, as a department, as a business, I think you're hurting yourself and you're just really like grinding through things just to grind through things. It's like make it faster and make it better. Now all systems are not amazing, but you're just more efficient that way.
Yeah, completely agree. And it's just like, as you have athletes that can do it, you make it better for everyone. Like they're not waiting on you as a coach anymore. Like, hey, they like, oh no, here's the program. Hey, coach, how many? No, I got it. Like,
yep.
The ones who are like self-sufficient, they can be.
Correct.
And it's just like you're always going to have to pay more attention to the guy that's just like, I want to be told what to do. Great, I'm here for that. But it's just like, oh hey, I look over here, I got a spot over here. Like you can do all those. It gives you a tentacle, right? And that's like, I go back to our bit, like it provides coaches and practitioners with extra tentacles that they didn't used to have access to.
Yeah. Yep. 100%. And then, another thing with that, this is just like benefits of it, but like now my guys, there's never not a day where they can't get programming. So it's like, even if and you're in the off season, hey man, it's on your freaking app. Hey man. And then, oh, by the way, if you don't do something and you don't plug it in, I can see that.
For
which I
sure.
think is great, not in regards of a control standpoint, but in regards of like, hey, are we actually doing things?
Agreed.
Like, and if so, great. Like, it's not hard to input it, so just input it, please. Okay, cool, thank you. Like,
Yeah,
it's not.
no, it's a great point about like you can actually be more effective as a practitioner because they don't have to be right in front of you for you to be effective. Like I used to think all that about the food service component of
Sure.
nutrition, where
Hmm.
it's like you had so many dietitians that are very frustrated by like, I just don't want to be a food service manager, and I completely understand and respect that.
Hmm.
But if you aren't managing the situation, you're not having those conversations with the chef, you're not doing those things, like it's the only component of nutrition that touches every single person in the building every single day. And
Mm,
it's just like if you don't care about that, you're not going to reach every guy. You're
yeah.
not going to have every guy on a program. You're not going to have every guy doing something, like you're not going to do that. But mostly pretty much everybody eats in the building for the most part every day.
Yep. Yep.
You're
Yep.
missing out on your opportunities to provide them what could be the best meal of their day if
Yep.
you don't care about it. So like that's a great point of just like being able to have access to those different things like provides you an extra level of reaching somebody where it's just like, hey, here's the recovery strategies to do. Like maybe they wouldn't normally do them, but oh, they're in my phone. All right, I'm going to do this. Like,
Yep.
great.
And if it's like, you know what, even if you don't do it, you can't say you didn't have access to it.
That's it. Yeah.
Now the onus is on you as a professional athlete, as a collegiate athlete, whatever, right? But you can't say, well, I wasn't provided with it. It's like,
Yeah.
well, no. It's in your pocket. Okay.
Right.
And I think because a lot of it, that's and I love my athletes just as much as everybody, but I think that's a cop out a lot of times. Well, I didn't have it, or I lost my sheet of paper, or whatever. It's like, the only way you don't have is if you delete the app,
Yeah.
which you can re-download,
Right.
So I think there's a lot of benefits from that standpoint. So, Joey, two questions. How can people get involved with you and your company? And then where can they reach you guys at?
Yeah, OIM Performance. So OIMperformance.com. My socials are Joey Blake 11. Available for anybody to reach out. I'm pretty quick to respond. I don't have the day-to-day athlete interaction anymore, so love talking to other practitioners. I've kind of navigated my scope from helping athletes to helping practitioners now.
Mm.
I think what we're able to provide people and alleviate a pain point, like we mentioned the paper stuff, like hey, if there was a way for strength coaches not to have to set up the weight room, I bet they wouldn't set it up. Like when they get that figured out, they probably won't do it anymore, right? So it's like
Mhm.
that's what
Mhm.
we've done is like we've
Yeah,
really made this process. We're super competitive pricing. I don't want to get too granular on
sure.
that, but like we really have alleviated a pain point and given you some time back in your schedule to make things more efficient. We want to be the best quality products we can be. There's a lot of things that we've done. We're NSF certified for sport, all of our
Yep.
products. So,
Mhm.
we want to make sure that we're safe for everybody, not just athletes to take. And then we make it easy, right? Like you're not dealing with 6 different bottles and doing those different things. Like everything's in your sachet. It can have your name on it. It can have the protocol on it, AM, PM, whatever you want it to be, whatever makes the best use for you. Everything from concussion protocols to daily implementation to recovery protocols, really kind of unique thing that we're doing. And that's ultimately what I was using it as a
Yeah.
practitioner.
Yeah.
So I don't have to sell our product because I
Yeah.
used it and I get it.
Yeah.
And it helped me.
Yeah.
I was literally bagging 4 different protocols. I didn't have a life. So on Friday nights, I'm watching like, Mountain West football in my living room,
Yeah.
bagging up vitamins from this company. I'm like,
Yeah.
where were
Yeah.
you guys the past 8 years of my career? While I was doing
Yeah.
this, and
Yeah.
so I saw the use case for this,
Sure.
and really excited. Then I really want to kind of own the product development piece, and honestly, that's a big thing from that we've gotten of building our new products is feedback we've gotten from dietitians, strength coaches,
Mhm.
athletic trainers on what are the holes in the market, how can we chase down new things, how can we pursue those new avenues, and then
Yeah.
let's find a solution for it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's absolutely fantastic. I love when people go from a customer to, hey, this is something that I really believe in, because I think if you don't use it, I think you start best at, hey, I was a customer first, and
Yeah.
now I really, really believe in this, and this is something that I, recommend. And I think that's
Sure.
fantastic. So guys, if you would do us a huge favor, go reach out to them, see how you can either get involved, utilize their products, and then how you can reach out to Joey as well online and stuff, because this was a fantastic conversation and it was absolutely great, the range of it, because I think, like you said, there's so many silos, and so people only want to talk about strength and conditioning or only want to talk about, and it's like, how do we collaborate and intertwine everybody to then have a model that gets results for everybody in all departments? And I thought this was a great step in the right direction to say, how can we bring in nutrition and S&C and chefs? I didn't even think about that, but in chefs, to get the athletes to buy in more and with the end goal to help them. That's the goal. So they can be the best for their performance.
Yeah, I think, and you and I had some great offline conversations about it, and no pun intended here, but how I used to always look at nutrition was, how can I supplement these other departments, right?
Yeah.
I think, as we break down and this is probably very basic thinking, it's like strength and conditioning, bigger, faster, stronger.
Sure.
How can nutrition help that? Training room, availability, recovery. How can nutrition help with that? And then it's vice versa, strength. How can I help nutrition? Well, hey, really having trouble with these three guys, would really love, like, hey, if you could check it, great. Would love to, like, hey, what do they need? Is it a positive reinforcement? Do I need to get great. You have those individualized. Training room. Hey, someone's in return to play. Hey, this daily supplementation on these three things is really key. Can you add this to your rehab card? I would really like this to be the first phase of their rehab every single day. Yeah, great. Love it. It's added to their card. It's now a check box for that person. It's a part of rehab. When you get that synergistic effect of everybody's helping everybody within performance, at the end of the day, if guys are available and recovered, strength and conditioning still gets credit for that too.
Sure.
If guys are operating at the highest level, the training room still gets credit for that too. Nutrition is intertwined with all those things. The more we can get aligned on what really matters, and it's the athlete at the end of the day, it's the better, like, everyone's moving in the same direction, and it makes it easy. And I think that's ultimately what we want to do. I think sometimes we just have to get out of each other's way a little bit, and empower people, and then, let them be the expert, and then want to help.
I really, really, really enjoy that example you just gave, because those small, subtle changes, like you said, that's what goes a long way, right?
For sure.
But, to your point of, hey, can you add this to their card and it's their first phase? Some practitioners may look at that and be like, well, it's not going to be the first phase because they're going with me, and it's like, get over yourself, bro. Like, maybe that's 30 seconds of their life.
Yeah,
Like,
while
okay.
they're sitting there, doing, game ready for 15 minutes to start the rehab, like, can you just hand them this cherry juice and these three things?
Yes.
Like, everyone's gonna be like, yeah, no problem. And then you're gonna have certain athletes that they'll do it on their own. But it's just like, hey, I need I've got to be over here dealing with the bulk. Can you help me with this? I think most people are wired to be like, yes, I can help you.
Right.
And it's also like, hey, well, I got to be willing to ask as well. And I think that's where it starts, is like, hey, you have to extend the olive branch to somebody. And like, honestly, it's educating sometimes the practitioners on why it's beneficial. Like, I think sometimes we take for granted what everyone knows about each other's discipline.
Yeah.
I think we have to be willing to educate in a very positive way, not like, what do you mean you don't know what this is good for?
Yeah.
Like, I think we all have to have that understanding with each other.
Which is why I think it was great to touch on a point that you said earlier, how you guys did an internal professional development where you didn't get somebody externally, excuse me, you said, hey, you guys are all professionals in your specific craft. Why don't you educate us more?
100%.
And what that does, not only does it say, you're really an expert, this is fantastic, but it allows for the conversation piece to say, how can we develop together? How can we work together? How can we intertwine together more? I respect that you know that, or you know what? I didn't know that about nutrition or about injury prevention or reduction or whatever. It just opens the door for more conversations and allows the cohesive unit as departments to then say, hey, man, yeah, I can do that for you. I would actually really appreciate to do that for you. Oh, thank you so much, because I'm going to be over here at, on the practice field or whatever, right?
For sure.
But I think like you said, and I think we would be surprised how much we forget or don't know, how other departments don't know about what we know. Because last point, I heard something that, and it was really interesting. It made me stop and think, but it said, if everybody knew what you knew, they would probably come to a similar conclusion as you. But it's your job to get them to know what you know. Because if they don't know what you know, they're not going to come to the same conclusion as you.
For sure.
And it's like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's like,
that's great. I think you should end on that.
Yeah, I think so too. Joey, thank you for your time. Thank you for the conversation, man. I actually look forward to a lot more with you. This was fantastic. I appreciate you and your time. And just want to let you know that.
Yeah, appreciate you, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, do us a huge favor, share the show. If you got something from this, let somebody know, because it's the only way it grows. And Joey, thanks, man.